Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. This is going to be all about the power of reporting in ArcGIS, and we're going to just jump right in. When it comes to this webinar, if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to scan the QR code or go to the Slido website. And then this will also be where we're conducting a few polls throughout, so be sure to interact with those. So in terms of who we are, I'm Eve. I'm a GIS consultant here at Esri UK, and I am joined by my fellow GIS consultant and colleague, Catherine. In terms of some housekeeping, this webinar will be recorded and a link is going to be shared in the follow-up email. This email will also include a variety of resources to help you dive deeper into reporting within ArcGIS. And then after we go through some of our demonstrations, there's going to be a Q&A. So we'd really like to answer as many questions as we can from you. And you can submit these at any point using that QR code, which is currently on the screen, or accessing it through the Slido website with the event code also on the screen. In terms of today's agenda, what will we be talking about? We're going to start with reporting capabilities all across the ArcGIS system. We're then going to move directly into reporting within the desktop. From there, we will go into web-based reporting and the variety of applications that we have there, including the ability to set a narrative-based report. And then finally, we're going to be taking a step back and looking at how you can use reporting as an administrator to help more effectively manage your organization. And then to top it all off, we will be finishing with our Q&A. So when it comes to reporting in ArcGIS, there are a variety of ways that you can use and configure reports within ArcGIS. And with any of these offerings, it all comes down to the way that you want to deliver information and how you want people to interact with it. We have Survey 123, which is our form-centric application for data collection. And this has report templates, which lets you generate reports as data is coming in. In our web offerings, we have ArcGIS Insights, which is an application focused on letting users explore data analysis and visualizations to support their decision making. And it has its own report designer. Then we have ArcGIS Dashboards, which is a single screen interface perfect to support any real-time or near real-time reporting. And ArcGIS StoryMaps, which is perfect for any narrative reporting that you'd like to do. And then last but not least, we have Report Builder for ArcGIS, which, as the name suggests, is a dedicated reporting application. And unlike the other web offerings, this extension is available at an additional cost. And then moving on over to reporting in the desktop, we have ArcGIS Pro. Now, we're not going to have time to talk about the capabilities across all of these applications. So instead, we're going to do a deeper dive into these three. And we're going to start with ArcGIS Pro. So I'm now going to pass it on over to Catherine to talk to us a little bit more about that.
ArcGIS Pro is our professional desktop GIS application. And if you're new to Pro, I'd recommend catching up on last month's webinar, Building Stronger Foundations in ArcGIS Pro, in which Dave and Scott took us through some really useful tips and tricks to get started. And you can find the recording of that on our website. Today we are focusing on reporting, so I'm going to look at two key areas. The first is layouts, as we know a lot of you have requirements to export or print maps that will feed into reports. So I'll take you through how you can use dynamic elements and map series to increase the efficiency of your map making. I'll then move on to setting up multi-page reports in Pro. And again, these will have dynamic elements like charts and graphs. So I'll switch into Pro and we can get started with the demo. I'm going to be focusing on crime data in Bristol, and I've already got several datasets loaded into my map, including the City of Bristol boundary, the lower super output areas within Bristol, and some crime data I downloaded from data.police.uk. and I've symbolized this by crime type and applied clustering. As I zoom into my map, these clusters will dynamically update until I can see individual crime points. So I'm going to create several different layouts today, and I've already set up a simple one to get started. I've done this from the Insert tab and the New Layout menu. And if I switch into that layout, you'll see I've kept it simple, and my map has a title, the main map frame, and other key elements you'd expect to see: the legend, the scale bar, the north arrow. I've also utilised dynamic text for the date and scale, as well as the creator of this map, and you can see this uses tags. If I switch to text view, you can see the syntax that these tags use. So these elements will update automatically based on the properties of my map. And you can add dynamic text from the Insert menu again, choosing dynamic text. And as I scroll through, you'll see there's lots of different options available to you. So while this map is a useful starting point, I think I could gain more insight into my data by adding some charts. I'll switch back to my main map, and I'll add some charts to the crime data. You can do this by right-clicking on the layer and going to Create Chart. You'll see there's lots of different options, from simple bar charts down to data clocks. I'm going to pick a pie chart, and when I click this, the Chart Properties pane opens on the right-hand side of my map. I can select the layer I want to display in this pie chart, so I'm going to choose the last outcome category of the crimes. And you can see I immediately get a preview of my chart in the bottom pane. I have lots of different options to change how this pie chart looks. For example, I could turn it into a donut rather than a pie chart. I can increase the label character limit to ensure they don't get cut off, and I could change the colours if I wished. I can also update the name. And once I'm happy, I can close this Chart Properties pane and the preview window. You can see now this pie chart is underneath a charts heading in my contents pane, and I've also got a bar chart that I previously configured. If I open this up, you can see it's a simple bar chart showing the crime type using the same colours as my map symbology uses. So now I've got two charts for this data. I'm going to add them into a layout. You can see I've already placed my bar chart underneath my map, and to place my pie chart in this space next to it, I'll go again to the Insert menu and choose Chart Frame. You can see my two charts there to choose from. I'll pick the pie chart and I'll simply drag the box where I want to place it. Now I'll need to do some light editing to make sure my labels are readable, but you can see how easy it is to add charts, and these will update whenever my data updates. So I mentioned at the start I was going to produce several different layouts, some looking at the whole of Bristol, but others delving into the detail at LSOA. So if I switch into a new map, you can see an example of an LSOA and the crimes within it. So I'm going to utilise a map series to create maps for every LSOA. And you might be more familiar with the term data-driven pages if you've ever done this in ArcMap. So I'll open up another layout that I've pre-configured, and you'll see the map and the chart frames are empty at the moment. To set up my map frame, again from the Insert menu in Pro, I'm going to choose Map Series, and I'll choose to create a spatial series. Note you can also create a series from a bookmark if you have bookmarks within your map. Choosing the spatial map series will open up the layout properties, and I can choose the layer I want to base this map series on. The LSOA layer is already chosen for me, so I don't need to change that. But I do want to change the name field to, rather than it being the LSOA code, I want it to be the LSOA name. I've also got additional options to choose the page numbering and the grouping if I want to, and I can set up the scale I want for each of my maps. I'll make sure I tick Clip to Index Features, and this will mean for every map, only the data for that specific LSOA will show. I'll press OK and my map series will be loaded in for me. And you can see immediately the map and the charts have been updated for this first LSOA. On the left hand side, I can see a list of all the different pages within this map series, and double clicking on one of them will show me the specific page for that LSOA. Layouts are exported from Pro in the Share menu, and there's lots of different options to change the file type, the resolution of your maps, and decide whether you want this to be in a single PDF file or you want multiple PDF files, creating a new one for each map. So if I switch into the final output, you can see the map I created from this series. I've added some additional dynamic text, so each map is labelled with the LSOA name, and I've got the page count as well. And as I flick through these maps, you will see the elements updating depending on the data within that specific LSOA. So switching back to Pro, I'm now going to move on to looking at reports. So I'll return to the first map that I showed you, and just like with layouts, you add reports from the Insert menu. So I'll click New Report, and you can see the Create New Report wizard has opened on the right hand side of my map. There's various different Esri templates that you can use, and I'm going to choose an attribute list with grouping to enable me to group my report again by the LSOAs. I'll click Next and move on to the next step where I can define a report name and choose the data source. So I want this to be my crime data. I'll move on to the next step, which allows me to select the fields that I want to include in my report. I'm going to choose the LSOA name, crime type, last outcome category, and the month. I can also drag and drop these fields if I want to reorder them in my report. Clicking Next allows me to set up the grouping for my report, so here I'm going to select the LSOA name, and I'm happy with how it's sorted. I can add another level of sorting if I require, and I can also add a summary statistic, for example, a count of each crime type. Clicking Next brings me to the page properties, so I can change the size and choose a different styling, for example, cool tones. When I click Finish, this new report will be opened in a new tab in my Pro project, and you can see it's a similar setup to when making a layout. On the left-hand side, I have all the elements of my report listed for me, and clicking on each of these highlights that specific section of the report. So for example, in the group header, the LSOA name will be listed, and then each of the fields I chose will be listed underneath that. So if you're new to reports, I'd recommend looking at the report tutorial, and we'll include the link to that in the follow-up resources. But to give you a feel for what this report would look like if I exported it, I'll switch back into the PDF and show you. So I've got a starting page with a title, and as I scroll down, you'll see that for every LSOA, the individual features within that LSOA are listed with those 3 fields that I chose, and I've got a total count at the end of my report. So now I've got a feel for what this report is showing. It'll be easier to add some new elements. So back in Pro, I've already created a report that includes some of the charts that I showed you earlier. So if I open up this section and zoom in, you can see, as well as listing those individual features, my report will now also include the crime type bar chart and the pie chart for each LSOA. And I added these in from the insert menu using that same chart frame function that I showed you on the layout. And you can add lots of different things to your reports, for example, a map or dynamic pictures or statistics. And to show you what the final report looked like, I'll switch back to the PDF, and you can see in this report I now have the list of crimes as well as these graphs. So I could spend more time editing this to look a bit different and maybe to match some organizational branding, but hopefully it's given you a feel for what's possible in Pro using both layouts and reports. And I'll now hand back over to Eve, who's going to take us through some options for reporting on the web.
Thank you so much for all of that, Catherine. That was a wonderful overview of everything in Pro. And as you said, we're now going to pivot into the web. And when it comes to web-based reporting, while we do have many applications to choose from, as you saw in the previous slides, we're going to start with Report Builder for ArcGIS as it's dedicated to this functionality. One thing that makes it so useful is its dynamic reporting, which will save you time on manually creating reports for hundreds or thousands of features. And it does this through its design once, run many times approach, which you'll see in just a moment. And with this builder, it gives you the ability to create virtually any type of report. This could be more traditional looking PDF styles or more interactive reports. And instead of telling you, I'd really like to show you a few examples. So starting with this Otter Spot report, it's an example of a more simplistic or condensed one. But as you may have noticed from the previous slides, you can create reports which are much more in-depth or complex. With our Loch Lomond once-over feature, we have the ability to interact with the map. It provides supplementary text and some sweet infographics. And then we also have photos that you can bring in, some additional charts, and any of these reports can also be multi-page. You are not constrained to just presenting data for your specific feature, but you can make it comparative and examine all of the other features within your data set. In this case, maybe wondering why the Cairngorms has so many more otter sightings than Loch Lomond. And then when you're done with your report, you could either print it out and have a traditional paper copy, or you could export it and then share it with colleagues. And navigating back to the index page of any of these reports, you can see where your data lies as a set at a glance, as well as a list of all of the features within this set. So if we were to click and explore another feature, again, using this design once, run many times approach, you can just see how quick it is for the report to generate on the fly for each distinct feature. If we move on to look at some of the other styles of reports you can create in Report Builder, we have this one-page approach. And then we also have this very bright facts sheet where it capitalizes on the use of distinct icons as well as dynamic text. Now that we've had a little bit of inspiration, I wanted to look into the Report Builder interface itself and start building the outline of a report. So within the interface, you can access any of your items, but you also have the ability to collaborate with others. And with that, it means that you could minimize duplication efforts. If you know someone has a phenomenal report, you could borrow that and then just modify it to suit your needs. Any of the data that you're pulling in can be from a web map, feature layer, or data catalog. And in our case, I have started to create a report using data from the Living Atlas on RSPB reserves. Now, this is what the builder itself looks like, where on the left-hand side of the page, we have access to all of these different widgets, whether it be charts, infographics, maps, and any of these can be drag and dropped directly in. And then on the right-hand side of the page, it gives you the option to modify any specific widget that you're currently interacting with. So let's start with the title. At the moment, this is just static text. It's going to remain the same regardless of the report. But I want something that allows you to see which feature you're working with. So using the insert feature value, I'm going to select the names. And this gives me a piece of dynamic text, which is going to reflect the feature that we're currently reporting on. And then using any of these styling elements, you could play around with size or positioning. In this case, I'm going to give it a funky color. And I quite liked the otter icon that was in the previous one. So we're going to go for something a bit more representative of birds, though I don't know how many kiwi birds we have in the UK. Now that we have a title, we can save it, and you can see how this now reflects this specific feature. If we want to play around with dragging and dropping, I think that a web map would be a really great way to add some additional context as to the area. And it also shows how you can modify the size of any of these widgets really easily to suit the layout of the report you'd like. At the moment, this map is quite a big area, and I would like it to hone in on our region of interest. So if we go to map and zoom to active feature, we can see how it automatically updates and it's now focusing on our region of interest. Now, moving back over to some of the text that I've already played around with a little bit, I wanted to showcase a bit more about dynamic text. So we've already done some when it comes to playing with the title and using the insert feature value, but you also have the option to integrate the other attributes within your dataset. In this case, I've done something for access so that you can always see the type of access to the RSPB reserve. This also lends itself nicely into another one of my favorite aspects of these text functions, which is that you have a lot of control through text rules. What it does is it gives you the chance to provide a bit more control as to what the user is seeing depending on the data that's available. So in this case, when the type of reserve is RSPB, it's going to provide the link only specific to RSPB reserves, in this case, an organizational website link. So now that we've gone through and done a bit with text, let's add a few different tables. So this is a basic data table which allows us to play around with exactly the data that we would like presented. In this case, just some more attributes giving context as to the region. And then this data table, you might have noticed, is one for related records. So this brings up another key feature of Report Builder, which is that you can bring in multiple data sets. In this case, I was interested in learning more about how RSPB reserves would relate to national nature reserves. And so I set up a geographic query so that when they intersect, it presents information relating the two. Now, we're not done yet. One last thing that I'd like to look into is the overall styling that's taken place within Report Builder, because they have done a phenomenal job bringing accessibility into the forefront of design. So as you may have noticed, there are different alerts that come up. And so as we change the page background or any of the text, if the color contrast fails to meet WCAG levels, then this alert comes up. And to help support making your reports more accessible from the get-go, they've also created pre-approved templates that already fulfill this color contrast criteria. In addition, newer updates to Report Builder have brought in features like keyboard navigation as well as alternative views for screen readers, all just to make it as supportive and inclusive as possible to the end user. Now, by no means is this a polished product or a finished product, but I'm hoping that you've seen how you can approach the interface, as well as a few tricks to navigate interacting with different widgets. Now, if you're itching to create your own reports and you'd like some guidance, we have released a few blogs recently on the subject, which dives deeper into report building capabilities as well as our OtterSpot use case. But then there's also great documentation on the Report Builder website, from tutorials to frequently asked questions. Now, this is just one of the capabilities of reporting in ArcGIS. And so we're now going to pass it back over to Catherine, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of our other web offerings.
So I'm sure a lot of you have used StoryMaps before, but if you're not sure what we're referring to, StoryMaps are a powerful storytelling tool for crafting and sharing compelling narratives. So we're going to look at how you can create an engaging report by combining data with a narrative. And I'm going to jump straight into a customer example. This is a story map created by the London Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, and it explains their local plan. So as I scroll down, you can see the story map begins with some context about what this report is showing. And I've also got some useful navigation buttons to allow me to jump to specific sections of the story map. You can see there's images and videos embedded to allow a real interactive and immersive experience for the public. If I use the Places button, that will jump me down to this section of the story map, and scrolling down further, I can see a map has been embedded. So this map takes me on a tour of the key locations within their local plan. So how could you achieve something similar? Well, I'm going to open the StoryMaps homepage and I'll take you through a demo. So in my StoryMaps homepage, I can see existing stories that I've created, but I've also got this button, New Story, and I'll begin creating a story from scratch. This will load a blank story for me and I can begin to add text and images, etc. to this. I'm going to use the same scenario that I was looking at earlier in Pro, so looking at crime within Bristol. I'll give my story a suitable title, and I can begin to think about the design. If I open up the design menu from the top toolbar, you can see I have various different options. With my cover page, for example, I might want to add an image next to my title. I can also enable the navigation pane if I wish, which will pick up headings within my story and create those navigation buttons for me. The next options I've got are around the theme of my story, so I could use one of the featured themes to give me some inspiration for the design. I also have the option to use one of my own custom themes. So if I open this up, you'll see I've already got two custom themes I created, one for this demo, which I'll choose now. And this means that if I have organizational branding that I need to match, I can create a custom theme and share this with my colleagues to really save time and create consistent looking, engaging story maps. And as well as the background color changing and the text changing, my logo has also been added for me. So I will close the design pane and I'll begin to add some elements to my story map. So I might want to add a heading first, so I'm going to add priority patrol areas. And if I change this to a heading, you can see that that has been picked up in my navigation bar. So underneath this, I'm going to add some content. You can see I've got lots of different options, from text to images to timelines. But first I want to add a map. Now when I click map, I get the option to add a map within my content or within a group or my organization. But I also have the option to add a new express map. So this allows me to create a map from the story map builder itself. And it's really good for highlighting a key area of interest or any key locations you want to draw the reader's attention to. So I'm going to zoom into Bristol and digitize a couple of priority patrol areas that I would like my readers to be aware of. I'm going to choose the freehand draw tool, and I'll quickly just digitize an area in the centre of Bristol. I'll call this priority 1, and I can choose the colour if I want to. I'll quickly add a second area, and this will be priority 2. I have the option to add a legend, so this will put a button on the bottom of my map so users can see which is priority 1 and which is priority 2. And I can also update my base map, so I might want to switch this to the dark base map so it ties in with the theme of my story map. Once I'm happy with my map, I can press Place Map, and this will be added to my story map. I then have the option to change how big or small I want this map to be. For example, I might want a floater on the right and add some text next to it. I can also add a caption. So that's a really quick way of adding some maps into your story map. You can also embed existing ArcGIS applications. So if I scroll down, I'll go again to the plus, and this time I'll choose the embed. Now this is asking me for a link to the content I want to embed. And I've already created a dashboard using this same crime data. So it's a fairly simple dashboard with some filters on the left-hand side, an indicator counting the number of crimes, and a pie chart showing the crime type. And users can interact with this and filter data as they wish. So to embed this dashboard into my story map, I just need to copy and paste the URL. I'll go back to my story map and I can paste that in. When I click Add, the dashboard will load in for me, and again I have the options to choose the size of this content. So I might want to make it large so users can interact easily with this. And there is also the option for readers to open this content in a new tab if they wanted to, but they can interact in the same way they can do if they were looking at a standalone dashboard. So that's how you can get started with story maps, but just before I finish this demo, I wanted to highlight a new feature that's just been brought to story maps, and this is story map briefings. So back in the story maps homepage, you can see my stories are arranged in categories, so I'm now on the briefings section. And briefings are a new shorter form storytelling tool in a presentation style. So for example, if you needed to do a daily or maybe weekly briefing reporting on key statistics for your organization. So I've created a briefing using the same crime data that you've already seen today, and this is what that final briefing looks like. So it's a slide-based tool, so I can flick through these slides and you'll see I've embedded maps again, which I can interact with just as I would with a web map. And I've also, on the final page, embedded that same dashboard. So this is a really useful tool for presenting a report, and you can share the link afterwards for users to look into that data in more detail. If you're looking for offline capabilities, then there's a new tablet companion application that allows you to take briefings offline. And there's more capabilities planned in the roadmap, so we'll include a link to the blog post on that too. So with that, I'll hand back over to Eve, and she'll take us through a few more options for reporting within the ArcGIS system.
Thanks again. So before we shift on to the Q&A, we're going to cover a few more things, starting with Survey 123. So when it comes to reporting in Survey 123, you can export a custom PDF or a Word formatted report based on your survey data. And this can either be generated as a summary report or per feature. When you're generating these reports associated with a template, you have a variety of formatting options to help style it as needed. And so this is great for having a pleasing visual report, as you can add in images and organizational logos and what have you. But it also means that you can design reports which are adhering to a specific format. So if you need to submit data to a government agency, for example, then it lends itself nicely for that. In addition, when it comes to sample templates available on the Survey 123 website, these will generate report templates, which includes customization options so that you can easily modify them as you see fit. Now, there are some requirements for authoring surveys in ArcGIS Online, such as credit consumption, so do bear that in mind when you're authoring reports. And then reports can also be used with ArcGIS Enterprise, but there are some exceptions, so I would recommend checking out the documentation for this. And then last but not least, if we take a step back and think about reporting when it comes to managing your organization, there are effective ways to manage members and content and credits all within your ArcGIS. When it comes to the types of reports that you can create as an administrator, it covers information about your members, items, credits, and service usage, just to name a few. And these give you comprehensive reports, which can be an informative tool so that you can better manage your resources. More information will also be available within the follow-up email. So if you're interested in really taking advantage of reporting as an administrator, then that will be a great place to check. I hope that you've enjoyed this webinar. When it comes to our other events coming up, we have a conference which is going to take place in mid-November, as well as an upcoming webinar all about harnessing the power of Arcade, which is an expression language. You can sign up for both of these on the events page on our website. And with that, we would love to start answering any questions you've had. So if you would like to continue asking questions, then you're welcome to do so. Please go to that QR code or the website that is on the screen. And to start answering some of these questions, one of the most asked questions so far is, what is the advantage of Report Builder over Experience Builder, as most of the widgets available are also shown in Experience Builder? So when it comes to some of the things that make Report Builder distinct as an application, one of them is the efficiency of that design once, run many times approach. In addition to that, Report Builder reports can be shared as interactive reports or as PDFs, so it gives you quite a bit of flexibility. And then there are also a variety of chart options in Report Builder, which are currently not in Experience Builder. It also just makes it quite simple to create a report template and then generate these reports using that template. There was also a question about Report Builder when it comes to enterprise. So at the moment, Report Builder can use data which is stored in ArcGIS Online or Enterprise. However, when it comes to the application itself, it cannot currently be installed or deployed on premise in an enterprise environment. It does only currently exist as a cloud application. Catherine, this might be one for you, but can you organize layer attachments for display in layouts/reports in Pro?
Yeah, so I was just reading that one, and I've never tried it myself, so I'm not sure, I'm afraid. There is one as well is displaying data from related layers supported in reports. So I do know that you can add related data, but I'm not sure on the attachment, so I'm afraid you'd have to check the documentation on that one.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then also, just as a reminder, we do have some live polls available. I mean, we are constantly trying to improve our webinars and make them as valuable to you all as possible. So if you can just let us know, provide some feedback, those are going to be available during the webinar, but we'll also leave them open afterwards as well. Going back, we can answer a few more questions. So when it comes to, are there any plans to have Report Builder integrated as a widget in Experience Builder? At the moment, I have not seen any plans for this to occur. And the follow-up question to that was, if not, does it support URL parameters for embedding? At the moment, also no, would be the short answer to that. There's also another question for Report Builder that I can take quickly. Can you do anything with related tables in Report Builder beyond displaying the data as a table? The main function of the related tables is for that table functionality. However, when it comes to bringing in related data, there is a variety of applications that you could do with that. So if you go to the left-hand side of the panel, you can bring in more than one data layer, and with that you could configure multiple maps, multiple charts. I highly recommend checking out the gallery on the Report Builder website for inspiration as to what you can do with data, but it's not just constrained to the specific main data layer that you're on. You could bring in additional ones too.
I can take the one on dashboards, Eve. So there's a question on live dashboards. Is it possible to link to a spreadsheet that I can constantly update, or can I only use static data? So this will depend on what data source you're using and where it's coming from, and whether you're using ArcGIS Online or whether you've got ArcGIS Enterprise with web services set up. So it is possible to have your data updating from a live feature layer. But yeah, it's hard to answer without knowing exactly what your data requirements will be. If you have a spreadsheet saved on your network and you don't have a web service for that data, then at the moment, the best option would be to use the overwrite layer feature and just periodically update that spreadsheet, that layer on either ArcGIS Online or Enterprise whenever you have updates in the spreadsheet. But one thing, tools that are being added to ArcGIS Online, data pipelines, it might be worth having a look at that, because that could also provide some functionality to make those updates. But yeah, sorry to not give a definitive answer on that. But yeah, there's quite a lot of different factors. But yeah, if you have any questions, then I'd suggest talking to your account manager or sending us an email and we can dive further into your requirements.
Great, thank you very much. One question is, oh, sorry, yes, please.
Sorry, I was just going to jump in quickly with the question about StoryMaps. So the question was, I was under the impression StoryMaps were no longer going to be supported at the Esri conference. So this is classic story maps, as they're called, have been retired. So these are some of the older templates that have just been replaced with newer versions. So story maps are very much part of the ArcGIS system and are here to stay. It's just some of those classic templates are not going to be supported, but you can find, if you do have existing story maps using those classic templates, then you can find some more information online about what that retirement will mean for you.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Another popular question is asking about the pricing when it comes to Report Builder. In terms of pricing, this is something that you can find more on our website, but at the moment, if you would like to take a 30-day free trial, that's another option. But you can also reach out to the sales team as well to learn more about distinct pricing depending on your use for it. With that, I think that we've covered the majority of the questions coming in. I'd also like to apologize if anybody is having problems with the Slido link. Apparently it's not working for everyone. And so that will be something that we look into for our future webinars. So thank you for letting us know. That's a really useful piece of feedback. But with that, oh, sorry, yes.
Sorry, Eve, I was just going to say I could take one last question, which is about if you're using ArcGIS Pro, how do you move layers and analysis from there to use features like story maps? So if you have ArcGIS Online, you can publish data layers and maps directly from Pro to ArcGIS Online, or if you've got Enterprise, you can do the same thing. And once that data is in your either ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise Online account, then you can use those layers within story maps. And the question also mentioned the Living Atlas, so just for those of you who don't know, the Living Atlas of the World is Esri's curated and authoritative content offering. So whether you're using ArcGIS Online or Enterprise, you can you can use the layers within there, and you can also bring those layers into Pro as well. So that's more focused on content, but you might want to make use of that in your story maps or any ArcGIS applications you have.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for helping answer all of these questions. In addition, it seems like there is quite a bit of excitement around the Arcade webinar. So please keep your eyes peeled on any of our socials. We'll be doing some promotions there. But if you register for the event, then you'll be sure to be sent a link for that you're able to access on the day, and tune in for that. So thank you all very much for coming to the webinar. As we said earlier, we're going to be sending out a link with a recording to this webinar. So if you'd like to look back and watch any particular section that struck your interest, please feel free to do so. In addition, we also will have resources going out on the variety of topics that we covered. And please feel free to continue to answer the polls and provide us feedback. We would really love to hear from you. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.